Hello, everyone. This is Sarah Benoit with JP Media Institute, and I wanted to make a quick update to go along with my most recent digital drop-in free webinar, which happened on Wednesday, August 3rd. And there was just a few things that we talked about, and I know we had only about an hour, so we had to rush through it, and I wanted to clarify just a few things. So first of all, when we were talking about cookies, I really forgot to just clarify the difference between a third-party cookie and a first-party cookie. And there are big differences between these things. I think as a marketer, I'm often automatically thinking third-party cookies. So I wanted to just do a quick roundup of what this means. So first-party cookies are really a tracking cookie that connects you to one particular website, right? And so, for instance, on e-commerce websites, sometimes you'll have a cookie that tracks what you've got in your cart, and it helps you to always remember the contents of your cart, right, while you're shopping on that website. But it's limited to that one website. It's not going to travel around and track you. And so that's where third-party cookies are the things that are being basically removed by Google as of the end of 2023. So third-party cookies are really those things that hold your personal info, and they allow you to be tracked as you go from website to website and as you shop and do other activities. It's basically collecting information about you as you go across the internet, and it's building a profile of you. And so, as I mentioned, Safari and Firefox have already removed third-party cookies, and Google Chrome will be removing them by the end of 2023. And currently, all cookies require some type of consent notification, right? So for instance, if you're doing remarketing ad campaigns through Facebook or Google, technically speaking, you should have a cookie consent form on your website to let people know that they're being tracked by a third party. Now, the reason I wanted to clarify this is because some of you were asking questions that I realized could have been first-party cookie related. And first-party cookies will actually work great with Google Analytics 4. It actually will help. First-party cookies actually help us all become more GDPR compliant and become more compliant with the California Consumer Privacy Act. So first-party cookies are a good thing, and they will stick around for any company that wants to use them, and you will still need to have a consent notice if you're using a first-party cookie. So I wanted to just clarify all of that. Also, some of you were asking questions about the technology at a deeper level, and I didn't really have all of that in my memory. So I went back over some things that Google has been sending me, and I just wanted to share a quick overview. So essentially, when it comes to Google Analytics replacing cookies, or even Google Ads replacing cookies in some way, they've had a number of different things that they're working on. Now, essentially what Google has is something called the Privacy Sandbox. And right now they are using this Privacy Sandbox to test out a wide variety of alternatives to third-party cookies. And as they've done that, they've actually come up with some ideas, so they're going to use those ideas and then trashed those ideas. So the most recent idea that was shared in February of 2022 is called the Topics API. And this is one of the most recent alternatives to cookies that they're entertaining on Google Chrome. So what Google Chrome would be doing is, instead of cookies, it would be using the Topics API. As you are using Chrome and browsing different things, essentially Chrome will curate a list of topics that you're interested in. And after about 3 weeks, it would then cancel everything out and start over with its tracking and building of those topics. So that is one main way right now that they're playing around with the idea that they can replace third-party cookies. Also, the rest of the world is participating in this conversation, right, as we move towards a no third-party cookie world. And there are a number of open source solutions that are out there. I think one of the top ones that's being talked about is called Unified ID 2.0. And that approach is gaining a lot of traction. And it's essentially this sort of idea that we can create privacy-friendly identifiers for different people that are on the internet, so we can respect privacy while also identifying people. So that's just, I sort of think a way that the entire world of technology and the open source world is working together to create some really positive things. Um, you know, to me, it's really important just to keep in mind that the goal here, like we talked about for Google Analytics 4, is also to leverage machine learning, artificial intelligence, and statistical modeling, right? So this part of GA4 is going to work whether there's cookies or no cookies, right? And there's a few things that go along with that machine learning statistical modeling approach. So the first one is IP anonymization. So the IP address that you're coming from is anonymous. It's not going to be stored and kept. The data storage duration choices have been changed. So the two options they're saying that we have going forward so far are going to be 2 months or 14 months based on some of the laws that have been put out there. So as far as how long your data can be stored in the GA4 system, you're going to have that choice. And then there is something called consent mode, which is in beta testing right now, which means it's not quite ready for public consumption. But if you're interested in a deeper understanding of how GA4 is making itself basically privacy and security friendly, consent mode is going to be this added piece that they have built in. From what I understand, it's something that you're going to be able to turn on potentially inside of Google Tag Manager and other types of systems. So I'm not sure if that's going to be available directly through GA4 because I think it might involve other types of software. But consent mode is something that you could be looking into and paying attention. Finally, a few of you asked about removing people's data. So if somebody asked to be removed from your GA4, how is that going to work? And I had already sent some responses to people explaining that a lot of this will have to do with having a website where you are assigning user IDs to people on your website, usually through some type of a login into your website or your app. And then basically those IDs would be able to be sent to Google Analytics, and you would be able to identify anybody by their user ID. There's also some other ways that GA4 identifies people. One is through Google Signals, and that is basically the system where if you have a Google account and you choose to have ads personalization, then information about you is being filtered through Google Signals. And then they call it by device, which actually means first-party cookies. So any first-party cookies that you are adding to your website, you should be able also to track through GA4. The other things I looked at as far as removing data for people that request that their data be removed is that in the GA4 settings, there should be something called data deletion requests. And so you should be able to potentially request that a user ID or other types of parameters that you're using to identify people, potentially you can find people in GA4 and remove all of their data through the settings. There's also something in development called the Google User Deletion API. And again, this is sort of a more advanced system that's going to allow you to delete data from your website for any sort of user identifiers. And again, this has a little bit more to do, I understand, with if you have people logging into your website, creating accounts on your website or your app, you may be asking them for different types of information, and then a lot of that can be tracked and sent into your GA4. And so, again, I think when you're looking at collecting user IDs, having people log in to your website or your app in some way, and collecting data from that perspective, and it's automatically being sent to GA4, that is going to involve your developer quite a bit more. Your web designer has probably had to set those systems up and help you implement them. So these are not things that you're going to be able to just DIY on your own potentially unless you have the ability to, let's say, use Google Tag Manager and really, add parameters and additional tags and codes to your website. So if you can do that on your own, then some of this stuff might make sense. And you can just Google any of these topics. Or like I said, you may have to get the help of a developer or designer. So again, I just wanted to throw out those additional insights. And again, I apologize for making the assumption that we were talking about third-party cookies. If anybody has questions about first-party cookies or tracking, please don't hesitate to email me. Again, thank you all so much for joining me for our last digital drop-in, and I hope to see you in September. Have a great rest of your week.